Hey, what's up, friends? This is Pastor Brian. Welcome to another edition of Brian Warth Podcast. Don't forget, you can get my autobiography, Young Man Arise, online, and it tells all of the juicy details about being sentenced to life in prison and enduring 16 years in prison. It'll give you fresh hope, so make sure you get a copy. Today, we have with us Marianne Garcia. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, Marianne, we've been talking about this for a while to capture part of your story on video for the world to hear and to be encouraged. So I'm glad that you're here with me.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
So we're going to start off by, you have an interesting story, and we're going to capture a little bit of it today in hopes of giving somebody some fresh hope. But let's start off back in the days on who was Marianne in high school? Like, what was Marianne like in high school?
So, Marianne thought she was very cool in high school.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I was already into these little party scenes and backyard parties and...
Backyard boogies.
Oh, yeah.
Is that like, I wonder what I forgot what they used to call them, like, anyways, like during lunch and stuff, they would go to a party.
Ditching
parties, that's what it was.
Yes.
I'm so far removed from that, but yes, ditching parties were the bomb.
Yes, I was definitely doing ditching parties.
And so, how were you first introduced to drugs?
Well, I was dating a guy, and we went out, and I was already drinking, but I had gone out. We went out to a party one night, and he pulled out a little bag of some white powder.
White powder.
Oh, yeah.
What was that?
It was cocaine.
Cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
So did you smoke it or sniff it?
I snorted it.
You snorted it. Now that's, you jumped. Like, you took like 10 steps in one shot.
Right.
To snort it. I mean, it took me years to snort cocaine.
Right.
So that's very interesting. And was it all downhill from there?
No, it was not.
What was the progression like?
The progression is so slow, you know. I know now that the devil's a liar, and you don't see your world falling apart. You don't see that. And so little by little, it was, you know, on the weekends or once in a while, somebody would bring out that, you know, that powder.
How old you said you were around that time?
About 17.
Around 17. And did you add other drugs in time?
Eventually, I graduated from cocaine to methamphetamine.
Wow. And do you smoke methamphetamines?
Absolutely. I smoked. No, as a matter of fact, in the beginning, I only snorted it as well.
You didn't do rock cocaine?
I tried it.
You tried it. You
did.
never got caught up in the rock cocaine.
It scared me. It was so powerful. And I want to say, I don't know, stimulating. It scared me.
So you never got caught up in rock cocaine, like seriously?
By the grace of God.
Man, that's interesting. So you start smoking meth. What does it do for you? Like, describe what was that about?
So my transition from cocaine to meth was specifically because I was spending a lot of money on cocaine, and all of a sudden people were doing this other substance, and they were spending like $20, and they were up for days. And that's what happened. I just little by little, I decided that I was gonna join the crowd.
Wow. So share with us, after the years go by, what was your lowest doing drugs and alcohol? Like, capture that.
So my lowest point is the very end was smoking dope every single day. I mean, I'm talking about going into the bathroom, and as I'm gonna take a shower, using that opportunity and quietness to smoke some dope, I would take a bottle of vodka, straight vodka. I would take it in the shower with me, like literally where you have your shampoo and conditioner.
Wow.
I had a bottle of vodka, or I'm not a bottle, but a cup of vodka.
Wow.
And I would drink and use every single day, every day.
So you had a tragedy strike you. Your firstborn child, firstborn daughter, Frankie.
Yes.
She was killed. And I would suspect that's probably the lowest moment of your life.
Absolutely.
Can you share a little bit about Frankie? Like, who, at her best, like, what was her personality like?
So Frankie was my mini-me.
Okay.
Very hyper, very talkative, and the beautiful smile, very hyper. She was just a bright light. She'd walk into a room, and if it wasn't her beautiful looks, it was her personality, her laugh, her
Very
smile.
charismatic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely charismatic.
Wow. And what would you say was the turning point for Frankie?
The turning point was when she was gang raped in a park at the age of 13.
Wow. And she, what was that a little bit about?
She was on her way to summer school. She was about to hit the high school in our city. And she went out. She wanted to try out for the basketball team. Her brother was a basketball person. He played high school basketball. He was really good. And she admired him. She wanted to try out for the basketball team. And on the way to school, she ran into some guys that one of them I found out later, like she had a crush on. She jumped in the car with them, and they took her to a park, and they completely took advantage of her.
Oh, so sorry to hear about that. And so you would say that she never quite recovered from that?
Never.
And is it safe to say she went on a downward spiral as a result of that,
Absolutely.
which was so traumatizing? It's unmanageable.
Right.
And so what was her next step of downfall after that?
Okay, so she's now 14, and it's really close to about a year after this tragedy. She gets pregnant, and she gives birth to this little baby, not by my wanting her to. Like, she looked at me and said, "I'm pregnant," and I said, "You can't have this baby."
Wow.
Oh, yeah, I told her that. She looked at me in the face and said, "Mom, I don't believe in abortion."
Wow. But
And
you were so thinking out of whack that you
Right.
were thinking of abortion.
Of course. That's how bad. That's my thought.
Right.
My thought process.
And she stuck to her guns and had the child?
Yes, because we had been in and out of churches. I had gone in and out of. I had been in some very good churches, but I never stood long enough in any church, and my kids would come with me. So she had enough of Jesus inside of her at that age
To
to
stand
tell
up
me
against
no.
you.
Yeah, to look
Yeah.
me in the eyes.
Wow. And how was she exposed to gangs and drugs? How was she exposed to gangs?
Well, I could say shamefully that all she did was watch me. My home was a party house. When I got my own apartment, I was living on my own. It became a party house, and everybody came to my house and was using drugs. They were gang members, not just everybody or just casual people. These were gang members that I hung out with, and they were always at my house.
So you say you take that burden of
Absolutely.
leading her down that route of gang activity.
Yes. When you talk about the blind leading the blind, I know now that's exactly. I never knew a world of Jesus. Like, I didn't see that. My parents, we went to church once in a while, but it just wasn't something that I saw modeled in front of me. And the life that I did see modeled, I went into that life. I got myself into that life.
So did she eventually become part of a gang?
Absolutely.
And so at some point in time, she went on such a downward spiral that she lost her life.
Yes, she
Can
did.
you share a little bit about how you heard what happened? Can you take us back to that day of how you heard what happened?
So December 18th, 2011, I am at my sister's house, and I'm partying, drinking, using, and I get a phone call. It's my ex-husband, Frankie's dad, and he says, "Frankie's been shot. You need to get to the hospital." And so I get in the car, and I'm on my way to the hospital, and the whole time I'm thinking, you know, Lord, maybe this is what she needs to wake up. I had already been having these conversations with her because she was getting out of control. And even for somebody that was loaded at the time and nowhere near serving God, doing anything like that, even for me and other people, her life had just gotten really chaotic, really horribly chaotic. And so I had spoken to her about this. And here we are, I get a phone call, and I rush to the hospital.
Did you think she had passed when they told you she got shot?
I had no idea. All they said was, "She's been shot." And I never thought in a million years that she would lose her life. because of a prophecy. Somebody had prayed over her at one point, and they said that many people would come to know the Lord through her story.
Wow, wow.
So I didn't know then, you know.
You didn't know that she was dead at the time of that
No, I
phone
didn't.
call. I remember my mom sharing the same story that when they told her that her son had got shot, she assumed it was in the arm or
Right.
in the leg, and so she went all the way to the hospital, fully expecting him to be alive.
Absolutely.
And so you go to the hospital, and what do they say?
I get to the hospital, and because it's a gang shooting, and they associated with gangs, they're not telling us anything. And I had to prove who I was, and her dad had to prove who he was. And once we get there, we get in and pass through security. We go upstairs, and they have us go to a room, and we're sitting there. And this has never happened in my life. Like, I've never been close to anybody. So they take us to a floor in the hospital, and it's pretty quiet. I didn't realize it then, but it was kind of almost deserted. And they take us to a room, and here comes this doctor, and she says, she grabs my hand, and what I always remember is that she was a small lady, and her grip was so strong. She held my hands, and she said, "Stay with me." And I didn't understand what she meant by that. She said, "Stay with me." She said, "Your daughter never had a chance. She had been shot by a shotgun. That was the weapon that was used, and she didn't make it. She didn't make it. She never had a chance," is what the doctor said to me, and I'll never forget that.
Did you get to see her body at that time?
I chose not to.
They offered you the opportunity, and you chose not to?
I chose not to.
Wow. Can you share as much as you want what happened that day that she died? Like, how did she get shot? Is there some things that you could share on that? What happened that day?
So I'm at my sister's, and she leaves, and she's gonna go hang out, and
So you see her that morning.
I see her that day. Yeah, that day, and she needed a ride, and so she called her dad.
How old is she?
She is she had just turned 20.
She just turned 20.
Yeah, she had just turned 20. She calls her dad, and me and her dad are not in good space at this time, right? And so I tell her, you know what? I don't have a car right now. I didn't have a car, my own vehicle. So I said, call your dad and ask him if he'll give you a ride. And he dropped her off at a friend's house, you know, in the city of Whittier. Why Whittier was very significant to me. And 1:17 in the morning, they say there was a shot that rang out. She was there with the guy that she was very infatuated with, I could say. They went to this party. I don't know what happened, but I've heard stories saying that somebody called out her name, and that she was like, "Hey, it's me," you know, like, "It's me," and she was shot. And
How many times was she shot?
a shotgun is a fragment, so they said there was 10 fragments from her shoulder to her knee.
So did they shoot the shotgun one time?
I don't know. I don't know. I've never even asked that question.
So the story is she says, I'm her, I'm Frankie.
She gives her moniker, her name, right? And she goes, "It's me," and she's shot,
and she died.
and she lays on the floor, and the police get there, and the ambulance arrive, and she jumped.
Was it a party?
No, it was a
Hangout?
I guess like a hangout. Yeah, you could
Okay.
say maybe a little hangout, right?
Right.
So they put her in the ambulance, and they rush her to County USC Medical because that's trauma. And the detective goes in the ambulance with her, and he tells me later that he's talking to her and he's asking her questions.
She's talking.
Yes, and he says that he has seen, the detective said, "Miss Garcia, I have seen death many a times, and I had no doubt that when Frankie left that ambulance, that I would see her again and talk to her." She died on the operating table.
Wow, very interesting.
Yeah.
And so this, no doubt, plunges you to the deepest, darkest place a mother can go. How did this negatively affect your life?
Well, I was already in my addiction, right? And that morning, I had told my sister, "I'm done." Mind you, I had been in and out of recovery, so I knew that I, how to get clean. And I told my sister, I'm done. This is it. So now this happens to my daughter, and I couldn't even stay sober for her viewing. I drank, and I moved out of state because the trauma of knowing that somebody intentionally took your kid's life, and it really, really had an effect on me. And there was a lot of fear that set in, and I didn't know what was coming next. You know, that lifestyle is very unpredictable.
So is part of the reason why you moved? Because I remember you moved out of state. Was part
Yeah.
of it because of paranoia, maybe?
Absolutely.
I could identify with that. Like after I got shot, I got paranoid. I was paranoid. Like I wouldn't walk down the street, and if we did walk down the street in a crowd, I would secretly be on the inside of the crowd, secretly in case somebody shot at us. I would not be the first one. So I could identify with that paranoia.
I would be in the market sometimes, and somebody would just like, you make eye contact with people, and immediately I was like, what do you know? Like, are you looking at me because you know something? That's how bad it was. And I moved out of state.
And did it plunge you? Did you stop doing drugs?
No. Okay. I had good intentions.
Right.
For about a good 31 days. I move out of state. I take me with me. I
Which
take
is
my
your
daughter.
First problem?
Yeah, I'm me. I'm the problem.
Okay.
I take my grandson, who my daughter had given birth to this little boy. He's 5 years old when she's murdered. And I take him and I take my youngest daughter to another state. And 31 days I lasted without doing drugs. I got to that state. I fell asleep for days because I'd been up for so long. And 31 days later, I get on a bus. I'm going to an NA meeting. And a bright idea comes in my head, and I get off the bus, and I walk into a liquor store, and I buy something to drink.
Wow. Now, losing a child is horrific, and it's the worst thing that a mother can experience. So, no doubt we cannot capture all the emotions you felt, but it was deep, it was dark, depressing. How were you able to overcome, particularly the shame of you saying that, hey, I led her into that lifestyle? That's extra layer of guilt and shame. How are you able to overcome that shame and guilt?
God. That's it. For the longest time, I didn't get clean right away. Even after that 31 days and I took a drink, it took me 8 months. So during that 8 months, there's nobody that beat me up more than myself. Everything you can think of. I wanted to die. I wanted to take my own life. And the only reason I didn't was because of that little boy that she had left me. So the guilt and the shame is, when you say guilt and shame, like, you can't even imagine how deep that guilt and shame is when now your daughter is in the grave because she watched you her whole life. And people would say it all the time, like, God, she's just like you, and looked like me and acted like me, and she imitated that whole lifestyle that I was in.
Those phrases didn't necessarily bring comfort to you because it led it to a certain outcome.
Absolutely.
And so explain a little bit, when you say God, though, like, what are some steps that you took? Like, did the guilt just vanish? Did the guilt just mysteriously lift up out of your life? What are some steps that you took and maybe had to take for a long time?
Okay. The steps that I had to take. Every single day of my life prior to my daughter's death, I had been saturated in a life, and you think that way, and you talk that way, and you act that way, what you see, right? So I had to completely, when the time came and I decided I'm getting clean, I had to pour myself, I'm talking about mind, body, spirit, everything that I had within me, to church. I knew all my life, all my entire life as a little girl, I knew that God was the answer. Like, I knew that happiness meant that I needed God in the center of my life, but I never had that. I had never got to that point in my life. So now my daughter's gone, and I decided that I need to get clean. Let me tell you why I got clean. It was going to be her 21st birthday. And on her 21st birthday, I wanted to go to the cemetery clean, because her and I used to smoke drugs with my daughter, Pastor Brian. So we tried to get clean together so many times. okay? And I never got clean. It never happened.
What is the pause for a second, and we'll catch up right there. But what is that dynamic of smoking drugs with your daughter? What's that breakdown in your mind?
Do you remember you asked me earlier about what was the most shameful time? That seemed to just elude my mind because I was drinking and using every day, and that was low. But the lowest part of my addiction is smoking drugs with my daughter, who holds their baby in their arms and thinks one day we're gonna smoke drugs together.
Sin
Shameful.
is blinding, and it takes you farther than you want to go.
Totally.
Right? It takes you farther than what you want to go. And so now you're getting right with God, and you're taking some steps by going to church.
Absolutely.
And we'll break that down. What are you doing?
Going to church, whether I wanted to go or not. Being moments in my life like that I had to, like when I say I had to saturate myself, like I'm gonna tell you something that's kind of, I don't know, a trip, is that I had to literally stop listening to certain music. When I started, coming to church, I had to listen to it. I had to read it. I had to hear it. I had to see it. I'd come to church whether I wanted to or not. And many a times, I wanted to just, dig a hole and bury myself in it. I didn't want to come to church. And I remember so many times God showed me really early that when I got here, it was just a matter of me getting myself to church. And I would leave this church building not feeling the same way that I walked in.
Wow.
I had fresh hope, as we say. Chapel of Change, fresh hope. That's what got pumped into me.
And so share with us a couple of the most significant things that Jesus has done in your life these last 10 years since you've been serving the Lord.
Man, the most significant things.
Or a couple. It doesn't have to be the most.
I'm a leader at church. Like,
Amen.
I have been able to participate in several ministries here at Chapel of Change. I've been able to speak to women. I've gone into prison. I've gone into juvenile halls. I have been able to be broadcasted into a women's prison because I didn't get cleared one day to go in and minister. But guess what God did?
Wow.
I got to be broadcasted in, from here.
The Lord will make a way.
Yes, He did.
I remember when you got
Always.
rejected too.
I did.
But then the Lord brought the prison to the front row
Yeah.
of your church.
Yeah, of my church.
And I would say too, your grandson,
Oh my gosh.
Frankie's son,
Yes.
right? Jaden, your grandson. Share a little bit of update about him.
Jaden is now 16 years old.
How old was he when his mom passed?
He was 5 years old.
Wow. And how's he doing?
He's doing, amazing. One of the things that has kept me strong is that I told the Lord that I wanted him to never, ever know that life. And now this kid is in high school. He plays literally freshman. He made varsity basketball, varsity football. He played varsity baseball. This kid is amazing to watch.
Wow.
Grades, good grades. He's a great kid.
Definitely,
a great kid.
definitely the Lord's hand is upon him.
Yes.
And you just recently got married.
I did.
How long you been married?
I've been married not even 2 years yet, a year and a half.
Year and a half. All right. Well, shout out to your husband.
Thank you.
And so, Marianne, you've been with Chapel of Change 10 years.
Yes, sir.
10 years you've been with a Chapel of Change. Let me ask you something. Have you ever got mad at me?
Absolutely.
You got mad at me?
I did.
No way.
Oh, yeah. We say this all the time.
Okay.
And, if Pastor Brian doesn't make you mad at least once, then what's going on? Like,
Right.
yeah, I didn't know the ways of the Lord. Like, sometimes things that you would say or do, like, I didn't understand. Like, why is he being so hard on me?
No way.
I would feel that way.
I'm so glad you pressed through. I'm so glad you pressed through, and you've been an absolute gift to what God is doing at Chapel of Change. And thanks for sharing your message and your story today. But take a moment to look in that camera, and what would you say to any other person who's experiencing hopelessness and despair right now? Go ahead.
I would, if you're stuck right now, if you've been gone through some grief, one of the tricks of the enemy is that he likes to keep you isolated. The body of Christ is so important. It's almost like you have to go against everything that you know. The Bible says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding, and always acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. And you have to just wash your mind. You have to saturate yourself with the things of God. He's the only thing that is going to get you through this. He's the only thing. The Bible says that when we are weak, that he is strong, and God can be your strength. He is the answer to everything. That's the only way that I survived the loss of my daughter's death, was by God's strength.
Well, amen. There you have it. Make sure you share this video, hit like and subscribe. And you can learn more about Marianne's story by ordering the book From Addiction to Hope. It's written by Third Step Ministries. Get it online. It will encourage your faith. Thanks for listening. God bless you. Have a wonderful year.